joined tonight by Harris County Precinct 2 Commissioner Adrian Garcia, and I'd like to start the meeting off with remarks from him.
Good evening, everyone. This is County Commissioner Adrian Garcia of Precinct 2. First, let me begin by saying that I hope you and your family have not been infected by COVID-19. But if you are concerned about your health or that of your loved one, then please don't guess and take the test by going to readyharris.org to make an appointment for a free test. We care about you and want you to remain as healthy as possible. And please make plans to take your flu shot as soon as you can. Secondly, let me thank you all for taking time to join this meeting to hear from the Harris County Flood Control District about their hard work to better serve you and address the many flood challenges that exist in Precinct 2 and Harris County in general. My staff and I have attended many of these community meetings with the Flood Control District because it is my commitment to ensure that you are getting the information you need. East Aldine was one of our hardest hit areas during Hurricane Harvey, and it's imperative that we come up with the best solutions for your community. I want to recognize Connie Esparza of the Castlewood Civic Club, as well as the members of the East Aldine Management District who have been with us every step of the way. I'm excited about this session tonight because you will hear about how this project will protect and benefit our neighborhoods. Community engagement is crucial to the work we do, and I hope each of you will provide your input during tonight's meeting and continue your engagement as projects move forward in our region. Before I forget, it's important to remind you that if you have not filled out your census questionnaire, please do so, because it could mean more funding for projects just like these, as well as funding for healthcare, education, and more. You can do it online by going to my2020census.gov. It takes less than 10 minutes to do, and it will help us get valuable funding for our county. Thank you.
This virtual community meeting is being offered by the Flood Control District to continue to share vital information with the community during this period when in-person public meetings have been suspended due to safety concerns from the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm joined tonight by a team of Flood Control District leadership and subject matter experts to ensure we continue to keep you up to date on these important flood mitigation projects in your community. As at this point, I will turn the meeting over to Imelda Diaz, who will share a message for our Spanish-speaking participants. Imelda, over to you.
Sí, buenas tardes. Gracias por asistir a la reunión pública virtual de esta noche. La reunión de hoy es sobre la segunda fase de la cuenca de detención de Lauder. Si tiene preguntas durante la reunión, envíelas en la área de chat. Ahí es donde vamos a responder. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much. We are glad to see all of the community so engaged in this project, and we look forward to sharing updates tonight. This virtual public meeting will begin with a presentation to share project updates, including the construction schedule and other important information on the Lauder Stormwater Detention Basin Phase 2. The presentation will be followed by a virtual question and answer session with Flood Control District team members. Attendees will be able to submit comments and questions through the website or by phone. Any comments not addressed during tonight's Q&A session will receive a response from the Flood Control District after the event. Instructions on how to participate in this virtual open house are included on the slides on this virtual meeting webpage and on the Flood Control District website. I will also share a reminder of these instructions when we reach the Q&A portion of the meeting. I'll now transition to Marcus Stuckett, our Engineering Division Director, who will share information about the district and this project.
Thank you, Sparkle, and a special thank you to each of you for joining us tonight. In this presentation, we'll give you a brief overview for the Phase 2 of the Lauder Stormwater Detention Basin. But before we get into that, we want to share some information about the Harris County Flood Control District. The Harris County Flood Control District, we are a special purpose district, and we were created by Texas legislature in 1937 in response to floods that devastated the Houston area in 1935. The Flood Control District was created to serve as a local partner to leverage federal funding for flood damage reduction. Our mission has greatly expanded over 80 years with billions of dollars of infrastructure improvements in the ground. While we are a separate entity from Harris County, the Harris County Commissioners Court serves as our governing body. The mission of the Harris County Flood Control District is to provide flood damage reduction projects that work with appropriate regard for community and natural values. One of the most difficult challenges we face is constructing effective projects that are sensitive to community and natural values in highly urbanized areas. Harris County includes 22 main watersheds, totaling approximately 1,800 square miles and more than 2,500 linear miles of channel. 2,500 miles is approximately the distance from New York to California. Each watershed has its own unique characteristics and needs. Tonight, our focus is in the Greens Bayou watershed. Our area is flood prone, and here are some reasons why. We're prone to extreme rainfall events, including tropical storms and hurricanes. We have slow, flat draining topography, and we have clay soils that do not soak up excess rainfall easily. The Flood Control District works with other agencies to share jurisdiction over flooding issues in Harris County. This slide illustrates that shared jurisdiction. Inside the neighborhoods shown on the left side of this illustration, storm sewers and roadside ditches collect stormwater runoff and start the process of moving it away from streets and homes. Storm sewers and roadside ditches are the responsibility of the underlying municipality and Harris County engineering in unincorporated parts of the county. The larger bayous and channels that take the collected stormwater and move it through our drainage system to the Galveston Bay are the responsibility of the Flood Control District. This is shown on the illustration on the right side. The middle is a stormwater detention basin, sometimes constructed by the Flood Control District. When storm sewers are increased, this creates an increase in runoff. Since it is our policy to avoid impacts to properties downstream, stormwater detention basins help to safely take in and temporarily store excess rainfall during a heavy rain event. Often, we partner with Harris County precincts, utility districts, and others to add recreational amenities such as trails to these basins and along our channels. On August 25th, 2018, Harris County voters approved $2.5 billion in bonds for flood risk reduction projects. This vote followed a series of meetings across Harris County in each watershed, which resulted in a list of 181 bond projects, including more than $100 million in projects for the Greens Bayou watershed. All Greens Bayou watershed projects have been initiated. A total of more than $680 million in partnership funding received so far stretches the 2018 bond program even farther. The actual timing of individual projects will depend on a variety of factors, including environmental permitting, right-of-way acquisition, and utility relocation. Project lists and project schedules will be updated periodically. Partnership funding is an important aspect of the 2018 bond program. This graphic illustrates the many sources of federal, state, and local funding that the Flood Control District is working to secure for Harris County. Each individual definition has its own definition of eligible projects and own requirements for local match funding. We will now move into the portion of the program that is specifically about the Greens Bayou watershed and phase 2 of the Lauder Stormwater Detention Basin project. The Greens Bayou Mid-Reach Channel Conveyance Improvements project includes 4 major detention basins and 11 miles of channel improvements, which extend from Veterans Memorial Drive to JFK Boulevard. The Lauder Stormwater Detention Basin is located the farthest downstream on the lower right-hand side of this slide. The goal of the Greens Bayou Mid-Reach Channel Conveyance Improvement Project is to provide flood reduction to the area. Based on the existing channel right-of-way and development in the area, the project will contain the 10% annual exceedance probability or 10-year floodplain within its banks. Though we typically talk about flood reductions within the 1% annual exceedance probability or 100-year floodplain, this area is densely populated and developed. The limits of the channel improvements to a 10-year, this limits the channel improvements to a 10-year level of service. Increasing the capacity of Greens Bayou to achieve a greater level of service will require extensive right-of-way acquisition on both sides of the channel, as well as additional compliance with environmental regulations. Both of these are cost prohibitive. Therefore, we need to rely on the stormwater detention basin to reduce flooding within the project area. This graphic illustrates the full extent of the Lauder Stormwater Detention Basin for phases 1 and 2. It's important to note that we have wet bottoms shown in this illustration, but they are subject to change pending environmental permitting. The phase 1 basin is on the right side of the exhibit. It's south of Greens Bayou. Excavation of phase 1 started in July of 2020. Approximately 1 million cubic yards of soil is being excavated. The estimated construction cost is $14.5 million. Phase 2 is on the west side and formerly referred to as sections 1 and 2 of the Castlewood subdivision. The homes in this area were purchased as part of the FEMA home buyout program. The flood control district will use the vacant land to construct phase 2 of the stormwater detention basin. The overall target volume for the Lauder Stormwater Detention Basin is approximately 1,200 acre-feet, which is more than 400 million gallons of stormwater. This slide shows the breakdown of the phase 1 and 2 basins. The basins contain 588 and 651 acre-feet respectively. The Lauder Stormwater Detention Basin is designed to have a permanent pool to help with the aesthetics and water quality. This is also a recreational opportunity for the community, which may include trails and park facilities. An additional 403 acre-feet of detention volume is also estimated from the preferred alternative. If this alternative is selected, the construction cost will also increase. Comparison: a typical football field is 1 acre in size. If it contained water 1 foot deep, it could detain approximately 326,000 gallons of water. Both phases of the Lauder Stormwater Detention Basin is expected to hold enough water to fill almost 1,200 football fields. Here we see the landscape architecture view of phase 2 for the proposed Lauder Stormwater Detention Basin. It includes 4 compartments, each of which has a permanent pool. There's a utility easement running through the subdivision, which contains 2 active pipelines and a natural channel running north to south towards Greens Bayou through the former Castlewood subdivision. The flood control district evaluated various alternatives to optimize the capacity of the stormwater detention basin and is recommending the alternatives shown here. However, we still have a potential to change the configuration of the basin. A 50-foot wide berm is designed around the stormwater detention basin to include 30 feet for maintenance access, and 20 feet will be reserved for potential recreational opportunities, such as hike and bike trails. This image shows the changes or reduction in the 10-year floodplain along Greens Bayou due to the Lauder Stormwater Detention Basin. It demonstrates the immediate flood reduction benefit along Greens Bayou and the P138-00-00 channel by the Lauder Stormwater Detention Basin. This project is only a component of the Greens Bayou Mid-Reach Channel Conveyance Improvement Project. Once all phases of the Mid-Reach project are complete, flood waters along Greens Bayou will be contained within the channel banks during a 10-year storm event. Based on these results, a total of 169 structures will be removed from the 10-year floodplain along Greens Bayou and P138-00-00. The majority of the flood mitigation benefits will be along the P138-00-00 watershed. So what happens next? In the near term, the project is going through the preliminary engineering review of the draft report, and that report is expected to be final by winter of 2020-2021. The design stage is also scheduled to begin in winter 2020-2021. A tree survey has been completed and identifies potential trees around the stormwater detention basin that may be preserved. Which trees will actually remain will be identified during the final stage of design of this project. Appropriate environmental permits will also be obtained by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and in coordination with federal grant requirements. For the long-term outlook, construction is expected to begin in summer of 2022. The estimated construction cost is $38 million, and the estimated construction period is about 2.5 years. Harris County Flood Control District has obtained a grant from the United States Department of Agriculture Natural Resource Conservation Service in the amount of $11.5 million. $8.9 million has been allocated for construction, and $2.6 million has been allocated for administrative costs. The Flood Control District will continue to pursue other grants and other sources of funding to finance this project beyond the bond election amount. Now, I will turn it back over to Sparkle.
Thanks, Marcus, for that helpful overview of this project. Before we move into the question and answer session tonight, I want to share a quick reminder that we would love to hear from you on this and other projects rolling out across Harris County. If you have additional comments or questions throughout the life cycle of this project, or if you would like to sign up to receive email updates on this and other projects in the watershed, please visit hcfcd.org/C34 to learn more about the basin and this project, ask questions, or to sign up for our mailing list. Community engagement is an important component of the work we do, and we invite your continued participation as projects move forward. Now, as a reminder, there are 3 ways to submit a comment about this project during tonight's session. You can submit a comment on this site in the box near the presentation live stream. You can submit a comment on the Flood Control District's website at publicinput.com/Lauder Phase 2, or submit a comment via phone at 855-925-2801 using the meeting code 9743. If you're joining us via phone tonight, please press *3 to leave a message. Additionally, I want to reiterate, comments not addressed during tonight's Q&A session . Okay, sorry about that. Can you all hear me now? Hello?
Yes, we hear you, Sparkle.
Okay, sorry about that. We'll extend our meeting for about 15 minutes because of that delay. So I'm going to go ahead into that first question. And the first question is for Marcus. How does this fit into the other proposed projects in the Mid-Reach area?
Yes, that's a good question. So this is just one of 4 detention basins that are part of the Mid-Reach program. So the purpose of the basins, because part of the Mid-Reach is to do channel conveyance improvements, the detention basins actually helps mitigate some of the impacts that's caused by increasing the size of a ditch. So previously, I showed a slide where I talked about increasing the size of storm sewers. Well, the same concept works for increasing the size of a channel. If you make the channel larger, it makes the water go downstream faster. And the purpose of the detention basin is to slow things down or hold it back so that the increase in the flow downstream does not impact other property owners that are downstream of the channel improvements.
Thank you so much for that, Marcus. Our next question is for Tawana. How do stormwater detention basins work, and will this hold water all of the time? Okay, Tawana, I'm going to try you again. Our next question is for you, and that question is going to be, how do stormwater detention basins work, and will this hold water all of the time?
Sorry for the delay. I had trouble unmuting. Stormwater detention basins work by allowing the water to be slowed down that's going through the channel by detaining a large portion of that water, which is the volume that we're looking at concerning the Lauder Basin that's going to be contained or detained. And the basin, if it's designed as a dry basin, it will not hold water all the time. However, if it is designed as a wet basin, it will hold water the majority of the time or all the time.
Okay, thank you for that, Tawana. Our next question is for Dr. Sue. Will this project prevent flooding in the area, and how many structures will it save?
Thank you so much. Good questions. The project will help minimize flooding in the areas, especially for 10 years and 25-year events. The number of structures that can be saved from flooding or reduced from the floodplain during a 10-year event is about 169. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. We have a question coming in from Marina. Marina, we are taking these questions live, and we see that your question is how many people are attending this meeting? And that answer is we're right at about 50 participants of the meeting right now. So thank you for your participation and your engagement tonight. Our next question will be for Dr. Sue. Dr. Sue, will this project prevent flooding in the area? Or no, actually, our next question will be from Marcus, and it's related to funding. How is this project funded?
Yeah, so this project is funded by a grant that we received from the United States Natural Resources Conservation Service. They provided us funding for both construction and for administrative costs, so to do the design and preliminary engineering that we're doing right now. And also, there's a small portion of bond funds that will help pay for the project.
Thank you for that, Marcus. Another question that I think you'll be able to provide some insight on is coming in from Arturo. And Arturo, thank you again thank you for joining us tonight. His comment is, my flood insurance is very expensive. I paid over $5,000 a year. This works, and if this works, will this help me to reduce my premium in insurance?
Mr. De Leon, that's a good question, and unfortunately, because the goals of this project reduces the 10-year floodplain, and typically flood insurance rates are based on the 100-year floodplain, and it's based on the boundaries of the floodplain. I don't think it's based on the reduction. So I don't think that it will help with the insurance rates being reduced. However, I'm not an insurance agent, so you definitely have to check with the insurance agent on that.
Thank you so much for that insight. Our next question is for Dr. Sue, and it's coming in from Rudy. And Rudy wants to know if Lauder Detention is a wet basin or a dry basin.
It will be a wet basin, and it will be regular in shape to increase the aesthetic and recreational value, and also help with water quality. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our next question is from Wanda. Wanda, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Your question is, will security be provided with the basin at all times? And I'll pitch that one over to Tawana.
Hi, Wanda. We, at this time, are in the preliminary engineering stage. So we will take into consideration during design if there needs to be any special security that could need to be taken place during construction. But right now, we're in preliminary engineering, and we haven't identified the need for any special security at the site.
Thank you for that question. Dr. Sue, the next one is for you, and this question is from Sydney. Where does the water go when the bayou overflows?
Thank you. Very good questions. The flow comes down from upstream, and when the bayou overflow its bank, it will go to the floodplain area. And that's why we are building all this detention basin, trying to store those flood water to minimize the amount of flow going over bank. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Our next question is from Selena. And this question is, are we coordinating with any of the improvements that the precinct has planned for neighborhood drainage? And I think I'll pitch that one over to Dr. Sue.
So that's the question number 12, right? Okay. So why did flood control pick basin for this area? So the Greens Bayou, the drainage area is very densely populated and fully developed. So to try to expand the channel, make it wider, to increase its capacity, it will require a lot of buyout of the property along the channel and environmental permitting and make it cost prohibitive. And so finding locations to build detention basin is another alternative to solve the flooding issues. And so for this particular project, this particular location was selected because of available land. Flood control owns the right of ways for phase 1, and then the phase 2 is part of the FEMA buyout program. So flood control got these properties to build detention basin. Thank you.
And thanks, Dr. Sue. That was actually our next question. You're ahead of the game here. We did have a question from Selena that's just before that question that I'll reiterate. Are we coordinating with any of the improvements that the precinct has planned for neighborhood drainage? Will you take that one as well, Dr. Sue?
Sure. I'm so sorry. I did not see that question. So anyway, the precinct 2 has drainage projects, and we have been coordinating with them. And if you remember, the presentation has a target acre feet for phase 2 basins, and we are way over that by 403 acre feet. And so with that extra capacity, we have coordinated with precinct 2, and we can take additional 30 acre feet as requested by precinct 2. So we can help with the drainage project by precinct 2. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Marcus, I have a question from you from Eloisa. And Eloisa wants to know, is it true that owners in the Fairgreen subdivision were offered the opportunity to buy out their houses for the expansion of these phases?
And I'm going to pass that question to Tawana Cooper.
I am not aware of that. So we will have to get back with you on that one.
Yeah, and so let me reiterate that any questions that are not responded to tonight during our live session, we will address those questions following the event. It is our intent to be as informative in these sessions as possible, but inevitably some questions come about that we don't have all of the materials to be able to respond to, but we will respond to all of the questions following this event. So our next question is for Tawana. Who maintains these projects, and what happens if the site is damaged in a future storm?
Okay, well, who maintains the project depends on what status the project is in. So if the project is under construction, the contractor is totally responsible for what happens at the site. But after the project has been completed and it has transferred over to the flood control district, then the flood control district's infrastructure department maintains the project. And if there are repairs that are needed as a result of a storm, our maintenance engineering department will interact with our infrastructure department to make sure the repairs are taken care of, and the capital projects department will support that effort as needed.
Thank you so much for that. Imelda, I'd like for you to jump in here and remind our Spanish-speaking participants that we are taking questions in Spanish tonight.
Sí, les puedo recordar que si tienen preguntas durante la reunión, envíelas en la área del chat. Ahí es donde vamos a responderles. Gracias.
Thank you so much for that. Marcus, this next question is for you. Will people up or downstream from this be negatively impacted?
So the answer to that question is no. That's the reason for building the detention basins to not only reduce the flood reduction in the area now, but also to mitigate the impacts that will be a part of the channel improvements at the Greens Mid-Reach project.
Thank you. Our next question is for Tawana. Since we are still in hurricane season, is the Lauder Basin already capable of detaining water, and is it connected to Greens Bayou for drainage?
The Lauder Basin Phase 1 is under construction, and that construction just started in the summer of this year. So I would say no, the basin's really not structured right now to detain water during a hurricane.
All right, thank you for that. Now, our next question is for Marcus. How does this fit into the overall bond program, and what are the goals?
Yeah, so you have to recall the intent of the bond program was to develop flood damage reduction projects to provide flood control the funding for it. And the way it fits into that is it helps support another project, which is the Greens Mid-Reach Channel Improvement Project. Just to give you an idea, our typical budget for our capital improvement projects, so projects such as this, was $60 million. And by us now having the bond and having the additional grant sources, we're able to push this project forward a lot faster than we would have just working off of our typical $60 million for capital improvement projects.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I'd like to just share a reminder again that there are 3 ways to submit a comment about this project during tonight's session. You can submit a comment on this site in the box near the presentation live stream. You can submit a comment on the Flood Control District's website at publicinput.com/Lauder Phase 2. Or you can submit a comment via phone using the meeting code 9743. If you're joining us via phone tonight, press *3 to leave a message. Information from this meeting and a recording of the live stream will be available on the Flood Control District's website and YouTube channel. Joining Marcus for our Q&A session tonight, again, your experts that you have on the panel are Dr. Sue and Tawana Cooper. So we'll move right back into that Q&A section. And Dr. Sue, this question is from Veronica. I live in High Meadows, and during Harvey, we flooded. Now with the heavy, steady rain, our streets have flooded quickly. Since the basin will hold 192 million and 212 million gallons of water, would you say that if another storm like Harvey came through, would it spare the neighborhoods south of the bayou that have been flooded multiple times?
Thank you so much. Very good questions. Harvey is a very extreme event. The return frequency for that is way over 100 years. And unfortunately, the channel, both Greens Bayou and the P13800 channel, only have a level of service of about 10 years. And the basins are designed to help reduce flood risk for 10 years or smaller events, and maybe up to 25 years. So for Harvey, for events like Harvey, I think these basins was certainly help reducing the flood level and flood risk, but to totally eliminate it, I think it's kind of like it's at the mercy of the heaven, I guess. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sue. We realize that some individuals have joined later and may have missed some of the part of the presentation. So we want to take this moment to cover some of the highlights of the project and to share additional information to make sure that everybody really gets the important information. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Marcus.
All right, thank you, Sparkle. So the phase 2 of the Lauder Detention Basin, Stormwater Detention Basin project, the intent of the project was is to develop a stormwater detention basin as along with the channel improvements for the Midreach project, which are from Veterans Memorial to JFK Boulevard. The Lauder Detention Basin is shown at the farthest right-hand side of the slide, which is not showing. Okay. Sorry about that. Typically, this project is going to bring the 10-year floodplain within banks. And I know while we typically think of the of losses or floodplains in the 100-year, this particular project can only handle a 10-year level of service. And by in order to increase the capacity to a greater level, it would require additional right-of-way as well as additional environmental compliance. And so both of these being cost prohibitive, the detention basin was the best option that we chose to go with to reduce flooding within the project area. All right, next slide. All right. So this graphic illustrates is a graphic illustration of phase 1 and phase 2 for the Lauder Stormwater Detention Basin. It's important to note, again, we've said a few times, it is shown as a wet bottom, but there is a potential for this design to change just based on some environmental permitting and some other things that we're looking at right now. So there is a potential for it to change to a dry bottom. Phase 1 is on the right side of this exhibit. It's currently under construction. It started in July of 2020. And it's expected that we'll get approximately 1 million cubic yards from phase 1. The cost for that basin was $14.5 million. Phase 2 is located on the west side, on the left side of this exhibit, and this is the former section 1 and 2 of the Castlewood subdivision. We purchased these homes as part of the FEMA home buyout program, and again we intend to use it to develop the stormwater detention basin. So the overall target volume for this project is 1,200 acre feet. That's approximately 400 million gallons of stormwater. And the slide here shows a breakdown of both the phase 1 and phase 2 basin, with one containing 588 and the other containing 651 acre feet of volume. Again, it's designed to have the permanent pools for aesthetics and water quality, but also to provide so that it leaves a chance to provide some recreational opportunities for the project. We also looked at having an additional 403 acre feet of volume in the preferred alternative, and of course that increases the construction cost. So, just for comparison, to give you an idea of what an acre foot is. So an acre foot is the width of a football field, going from goal line to goal line, approximately about a foot deep. And that equates to about 326,000 gallons of water. And so for both phases of the Lauder Stormwater Detention Basin, we expect that to carry almost 1,200 football fields, and that's 1,200 football fields 1 foot deep. So here we have a view of the phase 2 for the detention basin. It includes permanent pool compartments, which are subject to change. There's a utility easement running through the middle of that channel there with 2 active pipelines. So we were trying to avoid those. And again, this runs through the former Castlewood subdivision. We evaluated several alternatives, the capacity and we recommended the capacity based on the alternatives shown here. The maintenance berms around it are 50 feet with 30 feet that we allow for ourselves for maintenance purposes and our backslope swales, but also the additional 20 feet that will allow recreational opportunities such as the hike and bike trails or some of the amenities. So the intent of this image is to show the reduction that we would get from the project, where the dark blue is the proposed reduction and the light blue is the amount of flooding that we would see today. Once all phases of the project are complete, we expect that, and again, this is channel improvements and the detention basin, we expect the 10-year event to have all the flow within banks. Based on this alternative, we expect about 169 structures to be removed from the 10-year storm event. So our next steps. So in the near term, right now we're going through the preliminary engineering phase, which is why we're here discussing what we're here discussing with you today. The final report is expected in winter 2020, winter 2021. And the design stage is also set to begin around that same time. We are working on a tree survey to try to preserve trees. We understand that trees are a big part of the community, and people like trees. So during the final design phase, we will do our best to save as many trees as we can as a part of this project. We're also working on the environmental permits that we have to obtain through the Corps, and also that are part of our federal grant requirements. And a long-term outlook, we expect construction to start in summer 2021. The estimated cost for the project is estimated to be approximately $38 million, with about 2.5 years for construction. The United States Department of Agriculture, Natural Resource Conservation Services granted us $11.5 million, and $8.9 million of that is going towards the construction, with $2.6 million being allocated for the administrative cost, or the work that we're doing right now to develop these concepts. The flood control district we always try to look for other opportunities for bond funding to kind of help expand the funds that we have as part of the bond. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Sparkle.
All right, thank you all. It's always helpful because we know individuals have very busy lives, and some join the meeting later than others, to sometimes go back through, because we want to make sure you are receiving this critical information. I'm seeing some questions come in, and so we'll go right back into the Q&A portion of this meeting. And this question is for Tawana. Why do projects take so long to complete? And this is a question we hear quite often.
Well, that's a very good question. And the amount of time depends on what information we have on the project area to start with. Our projects generally have several stages. There's a feasibility stage where we can gather information about historical flooding. Then there's also the preliminary engineering stage, where we can gather information about existing conditions and what needs to be taken into consideration during design. And once that's done, we can move into design and construction. Well, the project time depends on how much information we already have and where we're starting. So for some projects, we have feasibility studies already, and we can get right into the preliminary engineering phase of the project. But for others, sometimes we have to go through the feasibility study, which takes time. And then during preliminary engineering, we're taking into consideration evaluations for existing conditions. And the design stage takes time also. That can take a little while, because sometimes we have to acquire right-of-way for our project. So we may have to relocate utilities and have contracts with those utility owners. And so there are many factors that have to be taken into consideration, and each one can take a considerable amount of time depending on what the existing conditions are and how much historical data we have.
Yeah, so to Tawana's point, there's a lot that goes into these projects, a lot of thought and research to have a strong understanding of where we can get the most benefit, and where we can utilize our funds in the most cost-effective way. Okay, our next question is for Dr. Sue. Does one kind of basin work better than the other? You mentioned a wet and a dry bottom basin.
Thank you. From the viewpoint of detention or flood reductions, both wet and dry basin function similarly. But the wet basin also provide recreational and water quality benefits. So from that viewpoint, wet basin will function better.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, our next question is going to be for Tawana, and it is, will there be any recreational component?
The preliminary engineering for the Lauder Basin does allow space for recreational components, particularly hike and bike trails, because our berms are going to be 50 feet wide.
Okay, thank you for that. Now we have a question regarding the timeline. So if we could get that slide back up that has the timeline. Marcus, I'll pose this question to you. When will phase 1 be complete?
So right now we are probably about 12% complete on, or 15 to 20% complete on phase 1, and the contract time was about 500 days. So take off about 10% of that. So we're looking at about another year or so.
Okay, thank you for that information. Our next question has come in from Marina. Marina, thank you for being here tonight, and we appreciate your community engagement. She wants to understand about the 170 houses. Will they not flood due to this project? And what neighborhood are those houses located? And I'll pass that question to Dr. Sue.
Very good questions. Most of the structure that can be removed from the 10-year floodplain would be along P13800 channel, which is the tributary to Greens Bayou. And so that will cover the Castle subdivision and Magnolia Garden subdivisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sue. Okay, as a reminder, we are taking questions tonight.
Whenever we channelize a section and that a portion of that natural channel is cut off, that it creates what we refer to as an oxbow. So an oxbow is just really just an old channel that that was cut off, or somewhere where we channelize to try to get rid of the bends within the channel, because the more curvy a channel is, then the slower the water moves. So by straightening the channel out, you get more conveyance downstream, and it reduces the flood elevations upstream. Let's see. We have another question here for Dr. Sue, and I think we may have Sparkle back. But Dr. Sue, the question here is, where will most of the benefits be, and is this something we can replicate in other places?
Thank you, Marcus. Most of the flood reduction benefit will be along P13800 channel. And the closer it is to the detention basin, the Lauder Phase 2 and Phase 1 detention basin, the more benefit it will be. And certainly this can be replicated in other places where you can build detention basins. Thank you.
Okay, yes, I am back, but I'm not sure what I missed. So sorry for my connectivity issues. Have we answered the question regarding how did you come up with this project and how do we know it will work? If not, Marcus, will you take that one?
Sure. Thanks, Sparkle. So one of the things we do, we use hydraulic, what's called hydraulic and hydrologic modeling, where hydrologic considers the rainfall. So hydrologic would be the rainfall that we saw for an event, let's say Harvey. Hydraulic is what happens with that water once it gets into the channel or the bayou. And we use a combination of both of those to determine. Again, I'm going to use Harvey as an example. It's a bad example because it was a really large storm, but we would use the rainfall for that event to see what happens if this project doesn't exist. And then we do another scenario to say, what happens if we do the project and we experience the exact same event? And that's how we determine the benefits for pretty much all of our projects. We always try to figure out, well, what happened, how does it reflect reality, and try to put in a project to try to mitigate some of those scenarios that we would see based on our hypothetical storms or by main events. And it's kind of why, these meetings are important. We want the input from the community, because A lot of times our modeling it's based on hypotheticals. Again, we model something like Harvey and we think we know what the results are, but the people in the community are kind of there to help us say, well, it really didn't happen the way you guys say it happened, which forces us to go back to try to figure out why something different was experienced in the area than what our engineering analyses and the science tells us.
Okay, thank you so much for that. We have a question that has come in that says, will these slides be available after the meeting? I want to share once more that information from this meeting and a recording of the live stream will be available on the Flood Control District's website and YouTube channel following the meeting. I want to also reiterate that any questions not answered during tonight's Q&A session will receive a response from the Flood Control District after the event. And if you want to have additional questions or you want to ask questions or make a comment or even join the mailing list for this particular project, please log on to hcfcd.org/C34 to learn more about the project. Okay, let's move on. Our next question is for Tawana. And it's from Wanda. She asks, are there any plans to buy out homes in the Castlewood area that are south of P138 and north of Lauder?
We have bought out some homes that are south of P138. Any interest concerning future buyouts, I would suggest that they contact Flood Control District and get a better response for that later on and get more information.
Absolutely. Sometimes when we get really specific questions, it's imperative that we follow up with you. So again, I'll just reiterate that any questions that are not answered tonight in this forum, that we will follow up with you after. And if you have a specific question, our website is also a great resource to stay in contact with us and to sign up for our mailing list. We encourage active engagement and participation throughout the life cycle of these projects. Our next question is for Dr. Sue. Are there any hike and bike trails near the site?
Thank you. Presently, the design focus on the flood control components of the project, but we have been coordinating with Precinct 2 to reserve space for future recreational facilities, such as hike and bike facilities. For example, the Phase 1, on the south end of the Phase 1 basin, Precinct 2 specifically requests to reserve an area for connection of hike and bike trail to Keyswise Park. And so in the future, as mentioned before, the berm will have extra 20 feet available to build hike and bike trail, and they can go down into the basin to get near the water. But all those landscaping and design will be done by Precinct 2 mostly. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And we have a comment that has come in from Connie, and Connie shares a compliment to us that says that this meeting is very informative. Thank you, Connie, for being here. Thank you for your active participation and engagement in this project. All right, our next question is from Marcus. What is the average rainstorm event if Harvey was abnormal?
Thanks, Sparkle. And I also want to thank Miss Esperanza for the compliments. It's always good to get those compliments from the community. So what's considered an average rainstorm event? So without getting too technical, the way we typically look at a rainfall, a hypothetical rainfall, in the past, pre-Harvey, was somewhere between 12 to 13 inches over a 24-hour period. And so that was 12 to 13 inches in a 24-hour period. That was considered an event that would have a 1% chance of happening in any given year. So when you look at something like Harvey, after looking at Harvey, it was a several-day storm, and it equated to what we consider a 500-year event. And it was somewhere between 14, 16, 17, 18 inches over a 24-hour period when you averaged it out. And so what that 500 year means is that there was a 0.2% chance in any given year that you would see that event, or is it 0.02? It's a 500 year storm. So 1 in 100 versus 1 in 500. So that's what I mean when I say abnormal. So now with Atlas 14, which included Harvey, Tax Day, and Memorial Day storms, those rainfall rates have increased. So I guess when I said abnormal, maybe abnormal is probably becoming more of the norm now, but it's just something that we wouldn't have expected to see again, or we would have expected to see with a very small percentage of it happening.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, our next question is from Margaret, and I'll pass this one to you, Marcus. How long before a plan is started on a recent acquisition?
Mrs. Byron, how you doing? I know who you are very well. Thank you for the question. I'm glad you're staying on top of us with that. So right now for the project that you're talking about on P138-055-00, we are currently in the preliminary engineering phases of that. We typically expect that to take about 9 months and maybe even shorter for that particular project. And then we just need to obtain the funding for it to go ahead and start the construction. But again, thank you, Ms. Byron. I think you and the community were very instrumental in us going after that project and actually purchasing the property there and just keeping us informed. So again, very much appreciated. Thanks.
Okay, Marcus, I'll follow up. This next question is for you as well. What does level of service mean, and what does it mean for this project?
Level of service means it's the amount of benefit that we expect a project to get, or I guess a better way to say it is the level of service means that it's no flooding within a watershed, or based on our modeling, there's no flooding. So when we say 10-year level of service, right now, the Greens mid-reach area does not have a 10-year level of flooding. So it's widespread flooding anytime you experience a certain amount of rainfall, a certain amount of inches within a 24-hour period. By us saying that it has a 10-year level of service, that means that all the flooding that comes out of the bayou within a 10-year will now be within the bayou. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't see flooding, localized flooding. So this is flooding from the streets or from the storm sewers and things like that. What it means is that if once Greens mid-reach is completed and all the other components are complete, all of the water that would have been spilling out of the bayou is now inside the bayou.
Okay, thank you for that. Our next question is for Dr. Sue. What are the environmental impacts of this project?
Very good questions. For phase one, we identify wetlands. So the impact there is more than 4 acres of wetland impact. And that's what caused the need to get an individual permit from the Army Corps of Engineers. And so that permit has been granted. That's why phase one basin is under construction. For phase two, we submitted our environmental identification of potential wetlands and potential environmental sensitive areas to the U.S. Army Corps. And they just recently made a determination that the nature channel you see in this slide is not jurisdictional. So the P13803 channel has been determined to be non-jurisdictional. So there shouldn't be environmental impact for the phase two basin. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is for Marcus. How often does a 100-year or 500-year storm actually happen?
And that's actually a good question. And it's not one that I an answer for a question that I have in my head right now, but it's definitely some data that we can look up. But it's largely going to depend on where you are in the county and where these different storm events happen. So it's not always it's the entire county sees that 1% event. There have been scenarios that we've had large events in the western portion of the county, and things are it's haywire. It's watershed wide flooding, and you see nothing on the southeast side of the county. So while I don't have that answer, that's something I can figure out based on the data that we gather, but that's one that we can definitely follow back on for whoever asked that question.
Yes, we will. We definitely do log all of these comments, and any comments that are not responded to or not addressed during tonight's Q&A will receive a response from the district, so we will follow up with you. This next question is for Dr. Sue. How are you coordinating with other local entities, the precinct, or other entities with projects in the area?
Flood control actually has a precinct 2 coordinator, Jeremy. I believe he's on the call as well. And so he's our liaison between flood control project team and precinct 2. And so we have regular communication with precinct 2 regarding the development or the design of the project. With other entities, I think this public engagement meeting is one way we communicate with the public. And also we have other presentations to Greens Bayou coalitions and other entities such as Austin Independent School District. We have several meetings with them to coordinate the construction of the basins. That's what resulted in the requirement for the contractor to have no truck traffic on Lauder Road during school drop-off and pickup hours. So we have done a lot of coordination with all the entities that we can talk to. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dr. Sue. Imelda, I'd like for you to give a reminder for our Spanish-speaking participants.
Así, para todos que no saben inglés, por favor, queremos recordarles que la presentación está disponible en español en la parte inferior de este sitio de web y ahí puede descargarlos. Muchas gracias por atender hoy.
Thank you so much. Okay, our last question that we'll take will be for Dr. Sue. When will this project be far enough along to provide the benefits to the area?
Very good questions. If you all have noticed, phase 1 basin actually have been excavated partially last year, and we call that intermediate excavation project. So that's a response of flood control to Hurricane Harvey. And so at the time we were waiting on individual permit to be granted from Harris County, from U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And so we excavated a basin and connected that to P13800 channel that provide some relief immediately after that. And currently, phase 1 is under construction. So the more the contractor dig out more volume from phase 1 basins, the detention capacity can increase over time as the construction goes along. And so for phase 2, until the excavation started in 2022, it won't provide any benefit. But as soon as the contractor started excavating the basins, it will be similar to phase 1. That as long as the capacity has been excavated out, it will provide the benefit to the residents. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Dr. Sue. So I just want to remind everyone that information from this meeting and a recording of the live stream will be available on the Flood Control District's website and YouTube channel. And with that, I'd like to share one final reminder that we are continuing to accept comments and feedback on this project through the comment period, which runs through October 1st, 2020. But we, of course, welcome engagement throughout the duration of the project's life cycle. Thank you again for joining us this evening and for your engagement with this project. We look forward to continuing to share updates as our work moves forward. Stay safe and have a lovely evening. Good night.